Hello and welcome to the second video in this Bitesize Pandas series. In this video then we're going to actually start coding some Python and having a look at pandas. This is going to be the only video where I'm actually going to not have a notebook open and pre-prepared already, just to remind you how to do it. I'm going to go down to the Anaconda prompt, navigate to the directory I actually want to be in, which is the Bitesize Pandas lesson 2, and now just to start the notebook. And everything opens and we're ready to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a new notebook then, like we did in the previous video, Python 2. And to start using pandas, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually import the pandas library. And I'm going to import this with the shortening of PD. And I think this is very standard. Everybody does this, so you know that when you're using PD, you're actually using something from the pandas library. And just execute that, and that's taking a little bit longer than I thought it would, but we seem to be okay, good. So pandas then, pandas is based around data frames, which can be seen as tables of data, but they're a little bit different. So in this video, I just wanted to actually create a data frame, have a look at a couple of things we can do to understand what is contained in our data frame. To do that, what we're going to need is actually to make a couple of lists. So the first list I'm going to make is a list columns, so a list of the columns. And fired up the Windows key by accident there, but never mind. And I'll make, let's see, one of the columns called weight, one of the other columns can be called animal, and one of the other columns can be called, let's have age. So this will be my column headers, let's say, in my data frame or table, and it's bad to say table, but I'll explain why shortly. And then what we want is some data, and I'm actually going to have a list of lists to represent our data here. Set something up very quickly, so we'll have, I don't know, a 14-year-old dog, or a 14-kilogram dog. Let's have it weighing 10 or 10 years old, weighing 14 kilos, very old and heavy dog. Let's just copy and paste that a couple of times, so we've at least got some data. Let's have a horse, a pig, let's say, and a cat. And let's just change some of these numbers so we've got some slightly different data here. 100 kilo for data here, 100 kilo pig, a 400 kilo horse that's only 3 years old, 6-year-old pig, why not, and a 15-year-old cat, a very old cat. So we've got here a list of data and a list of columns. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to create a data frame from these. So I'm going to call my data frame an animals data frame. I'll prefix with df underscore. I like to do that so I know it's a data frame because my brain's small and I lose track of what I'm doing. And here we can actually use a data frame class in the pandas library, pd.dataframe in a notebook. When you type something, I'll just go back and do that again. If I type pd.da and tab, it already gives me all the options available. So in a notebook, pressing tab can speed things up quite a lot. So I'm going to make a data frame. I can specify what my columns will be, and those will be my list columns. And then I can specify also what my data is going to be. And believe it or not, what I've done now is I've already created a data frame. And now we can have a look at this data frame. So let's do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do something. I'm going to do data frame animals, and I'm going to call a function called head. And I've got the parentheses on there. And when I execute this, what this will do, it'll give me the first 5 rows, if there are 5, of my data frame. So executing this then, what I've got is I've got my 3 columns, my weight, animal, age, and I've also got an extra one on the left hand side, a 4th one, 0, 1, 2 and 3. So let's try and understand a little bit about what we've got here, because although it looks like a table, it's actually not a table in the sense that you would have in Microsoft Excel or something like that. It's subtly different. The first thing to note is that we've got this extra column, 0, 1, 2 and 3. These 0, 1, 2s and 3s are actually indexes. And weight, animal and age are not all rows. And weight, animal and age are not all rows, or 0, 1, 2, 3 and 2 and 3, sorry, are not rows as you would see in a normal table. What we've actually got are 3 completely separate lists, or series as they're known in pandas, one for weight, one for animal, and one for age. And each entry in these lists has an index. So if I ask for the information at index 1, what will happen is Pandas will say, get me the series weight and get me the entry at index 1. Now, you would say, why is this necessary? It sounds a bit complicated. Well, one, under the hood, Pandas works very, very quickly, and one of the reasons is because it does it by maintaining pointers, basically using the indexing to these lists in the memory. But you can actually have lists of different lengths side by side. So you look at your data frame as if it's a table, but you could have things of different lengths side by side. If I want to just see what's in the, and in fact, I'm just going to things up a bit so that we don't go off screen. I have problems. If I want to see, for example, the weight here, I can execute that, and you can see that what comes out here, it doesn't just give me the weights in the series, it gives me the index for each entry in this series as well. It also gives me the data type, saying it's a 64-bit integer. If you're using a 32-bit computer, you'll have int 32 there probably. So each of our, if I try animal here, each of our series here are put side by side, and each entry in that series is accessed by using an index. And that's one of the most important concepts to get in your head when you're using data frames. They're not tables, as we know. They are separate lists, what are known as series of information, side by side. Each can be accessed using an index. So we can do a couple of other things. We can also ask for tail. So if I ask for tail 2, I'll get given the last 2 entries inside my data frame. If I ask for head 2, I'll get the first 2 entries in there. And that's basically the way data frames work. And I can do some more interesting stuff. So I can take data frame animals, and I can, for example, ask, well, give me the columns from the data frame, and I'll get given here a list of the columns, which is nice and useful, particularly when you load a large data frame. Another really useful thing is to know actually what the types of data are in your data frame. We'll see later on when we come to looking at merging that will become particularly critical. And we can see here that the animal is an object. That's usually, in most cases, a string, as we know it, or characters. And then we've got 2 64-bit integers as well. Another really useful piece of functionality is to use the describe function. So if you use the describe function on your data frame, you get automatically and very quickly, for every numerical column that you have in your data frame or numerical series, you'll get a whole load of statistics already provided very, very quickly and for free. And later in the series, we'll use actually a big database and have a bit more of a deep dive into data, and you'll see that things work just as fast as they have here. I can get how many I have in my series. This is particularly important when you first load data to see if you've actually got in each series, in each of your columns, the same number of data, the mean, standard deviation, min, some percentiles, and the max. Really useful kind of information in there. Also, if you've got null values or something, they'll appear in here as well if stuff is empty and it shouldn't be. Very, very nice. Another thing when you first load up your data that you might want to do, for instance, is call shape. This isn't a function, it's an actual property of a data frame. And this will give us the number of rows we have in our data frame, or number of indexes effectively, and also the number of series or columns that makes up our data frame. So you can already see that it's very, very flexible and very, very quick to see some information inside our data frame. But what about if we want to access some of the data inside our data frame? Well, we can do that in 2 ways. So one of the ways, I'll just go back up to the top here and just do a head again on our data frame so we don't run off the page. I'm very conscious of trying to keep things and not have to zoom in and move around the page. So we'll just go to head again and have a look at what we've got. Let's say I want to access this row here. And I can do it in 2 ways. And one can depend on the actual value of the index, and the other one simply a 0 indexed based access. In our case, because the index is going 0, 1, 2, and 3, they'll both be the same. But the 2 ways generally of doing them, if I asked for data frame animals, lock, and let's say 2, I will get then an object giving me the value of the series, the key of the, then the actual, and for each of those series at the index 2, the associated values. If I just want, in this case, for example, the weight, then I could ask for a value like so, and I would get 100. The other way to do this is actually to use the index. Now in this case, we've actually got numbers anyway for the index, so I can use exactly the same concept here and just put this in. But say the indexes were words or something like this, which they can be, then you could put this inside here and still get the value in exactly the same way. So very, very flexible, very useful. There's one more thing I wanted to show you actually before closing this quick video as an introduction to data frames. Let's say we've got some duplicate values on here. So say I've got 2 horses in here actually, so I'll put another 500 kilo horse that's 7 years old, let's say, and just re-execute this cell and recreate my data frame here and execute everything down. Now you can see that I've got my 2 horses. Another really good thing with data frames is I could say something like dataframe.animal.unique, and this will then give me an array or a list with all the unique values for that particular series. And this is obviously very useful. Say I want to loop through all of the different types of animal in my data frame, then I would just do a for dataframe animals.animal.unique, so something like this. So for animal in, and then I can print the animal, and I get the list of unique values from that series in the data frame like this. So those are the basic things when you first make a data frame that you'll want to look at, using head, using tail, looking at the columns, looking at the shape, then looking at the numerical values you're doing in your data frame. Maybe have a look at some unique values to get an idea of the size of things, all sorts of things you can do. So in the next video then we'll actually start doing some manipulations with our data frame and selecting some data from our data frame. So that's it for this video. Hope it's made some sense. It was short but sweet. Thanks very much for watching. See you in